Hi, today we'll discuss on workflows. So it's basically still in beta currently in GCP, and I'll explain to you how it's used and what the functionalities are. So workflow is basically an orchestration tool in Google Cloud. If you have used AWS, then it's something like a step function. Actually, it is exactly like a step function. So basically you can mix and mash multiple lambdas in step function. Similarly, you can do the same thing in Google Cloud Workflow as well. It is basically a fully managed service and it's completely automated. So you don't need to worry about the backend architecture as such. And its ideal purpose would be to automate complex processes where you have multiple cloud functions or multiple APIs which need to be connected and integrated with each other. So workflows are basically divided into steps. Currently at this moment there are 5 kinds of steps that can be invoked in workflow. The first one is invoking an HTTP endpoint. This includes a cloud function endpoint as well. The second thing you can do is you can assign a variable to a step. The third thing is you can make a particular step inactive for a particular period of time. Then you can also have logics created where you want to do conditional jumps from one step to the other. And finally, you can return a value. So that is the last kind of step. So we'll go through them one by one. So the first step, like I said before, is just invoking an HTTP endpoint. So the arguments are basically you need to explicitly mention whether it's a get, a post, the URL, the headers, the methods, etc., etc. So this is an example where what you're trying to do is in this step, you're trying to have an HTTP get and the URL is this particular cloud function URL. Similarly, it need not be restricted to cloud function. You can also call uh, any HTTP endpoint, as you can see here. So this is the fundamental or the basic step that you would use if you are using workflows. The second is assigning values. So basically in this kind of step you can assign variables and you can assign values to them. So for example, here I have a variable called number and I have assigned a value of 5. And similarly, that value can also be incremented as you can see in the next line. So this will add up to 6, the number you have already assigned a value of 5. You can also have strings as well. The sleep is fairly straightforward. So if you have a step with a sys.sleep, then you can give the argument with the number of seconds you want that particular step to be inactive for. Then the conditional flow is basically where you decide what is the next step that you want the flow to go to. So for example, if you look at this particular step, it says if the condition is matched with expression A, then it goes to step B. Else if the condition matches expression B, then it goes to step C. Else it neither of these conditions match, then it goes to step D. And finally the return. So if the workflows can either return a variable or it can not return anything. So if you want your workflow to not return anything, you just need to explicitly mention the next as end. However, if you want it to return a value, then you can explicitly mention return with a particular variable that you want the output to be. So let's proceed towards the demo. So here I have created a cloud flow in which all the steps are elaborated. So the first step is basically a normal HTTP endpoint. So here I have a cloud function endpoint and the output of this goes to this particular variable called current data time. After this, I have a switch condition, a condition. So this is basically how you decide where the flow of this particular cloud flow goes to. So for example, if the condition is if this particular variable that you got from the previous step, if it has a value of Saturday, then it goes to the sleep step. If it doesn't have the value of Saturday, then it goes to step assign. So here in this step assign, what I do is I just take a value of day, a variable called day, and in that I just assign the value of the first step, that is the step underscore http. So this particular value will contain Saturday, or it will contain any other day of the week. Finally, after this, it goes to the output flow where you just return the variable that you have assigned in your previous step. So it's a fairly straightforward process. So I'll just copy this and I'll run this. Go to workflows. Here I'll create a new workflow. So I'll just rename this as my new workflow. I'll use the default service account. Here I'll just copy the workflow that I have created. So let me just deploy. So if I go back to that workflow, if I run this HTTP, let me just copy this and run this. So as you can see, the day of the week today is Saturday. So if I go back to the workflow, I can see that if the day is Saturday, then it go to the step underscore sleep where it will sleep for 10 seconds. And after that, it will go to the assign and then it goes to the output. So if the day of the week is Saturday, then it will go to the sleep step, else it will not. So what I'll do is I'll run one with Saturday and I will just change this value to something else so that it does not go to the sleep step. So let me just run this once. I'll click on execute. Let me refresh. So as you can see that the execution duration was more than 10 seconds. So the reason for this is basically it was in a sleep state for 10 seconds. So if you go back to the flow, you will realize that it has gone to this particular step underscore sleep and it was inactive for 10 seconds. So what I'll do now is I will change this to Friday. I'll copy this and I will edit the existing step workflow. So let me just edit this. Next. So I've changed this to Friday. So now because this API will return a Saturday, it will not go to this particular flow. Instead, it will go to the next flow, that is the step underscore assign. So it will completely skip this particular step and it will go directly to this one. So let me just deploy this. I will execute this once more. Execute. So as you can see that it got instantly executed because it did not go through that particular flow. So this was a brief demo on how Cloudflow works. I hope this was useful, and if in case you have any doubts, just ping me below and I will respond back to you. Thank you.